Chapter 11. The Dueling Club. Harry woke up on Saturday morning to find the dormitory blazing with winter sunlight and his arm reborn but very stiff. He sat up quickly and looked over at Colin's bed, but it had been blocked from the view by high curtains Harry had changed behind yesterday. Seeing that he was awake, Madame Pomfrey came bursting over with a breakfast tray and they began bending and stretching his arms and fingers. All in order, she said, as he clumsily fed himself porridge left handed. When you have finished eating, you may leave. Harry dressed up quickly as he could and hurried off to Gryffindor's tower, desperate to tell Ron and Hermione about Colin and Dobby. But they weren't there. Harry left to look for them, wondering where they could have got to and feeling slightly hurt that they weren't interested in whether he had his bone back or not. As Harry passed the library, Percy Weasley strolled out of it, looking in far better spirit than last time they had met. Oh, hello, Harry, he said excellently. Flying yesterday. Really excellent. Gryffindor had just taken the lead for the House Cup. You earned 50 points. You haven't seen Ron and Hermione, have you? Said Harry. No, I haven't, said Percy, his smile fading. I hope Ron is not in another girl's toilet. Harry forced a laugh. Watch Percy walked out of sight and then headed straight for Morning Mattress bathroom. He couldn't see why Ron and Hermione would be in there again. But after making sure that neither Fletch nor any perfect were around, he opened the door and heard their voices coming from the locked stall. It's me, he said, choosing the door behind him. There was a crunch, a splash, and gasp from within the stall, and he saw Hermione's eye peering through the keyhole. Harry, he sobbed. You gave us such a fright. Come in. How's your arm? Fine, said Harry. Squeezing into the stall, an old cauldron was perched on the toilet and cracking from under the trim told Harry had it little a fire beneath it. Conjuring a portable waterproof fire was a specialty of Hermione's. We had come to meet you, but we decided to get started on the polyjuice potion, Ron explained as Harry with difficulty looked at the stall again. We have decided this is safest place to hide it. Harry started to tell them about Colin, but Hermione interrupted. We already knew. We heard Professor McGonagall telling Professor Flitwick this morning. That's why we decided we had better get going. The sooner we get a confession out of Malfoy, the better, sneered Ron. Do you know what I think? He was in such a full temper after the Quidditch match. He took it out on Colin. There is something else, said Harry, watching Hermione tearing bundles of Snodgrass and throwing them into the potion. Dobby came to visit me in the middle of the night. Ron and Hermione looked up, amazed. Harry told them everything Dobby has told him or hadn't told him. Hermione and Ron listened with their mouth open. The Chamber of Secrets has been opened before, Hermione said. He settled it, said Ron in triumphant voice. Lucas Malfoy must have opened the Chamber of Secrets when he was in school there, and now he's told dear old Draco how to do it. It's obvious. Wish Dobby's told you what kind of monster in there, though. I want to know how come nobody noticed it sneaking around the school. Maybe it can make itself invisible, said Hermione, prodding Lich to the bottom of the cauldron. Or maybe it can distinguish itself, pretend to be a suit of armor or something. I have read about cameline goals. You read too much, Hermione, said Ron, pouring dead lacewing on the top of the leeches. He crumbled up the empty lacewing bag and looking at Harry. So Dobby stopped us from getting on the train and broke your arm. He shook his head. You know what, Harry? If he doesn't stop trying to save your life, he's going to kill you. The news that Colin Creevy had been attacked and was now lying as so dead in hospital wing had spread through the entire school by Monday morning. The air was suddenly thick with rumor and suspicion. The first year were now moving around the castle in tight knit group as though scared they would be attacked if they ventured forth alone. Guinea Weasley, who sat next to Colin Gravy in charms, was distraught, but Harry felt that Fred and George were going the wrong way about cheering her up. They were talking tones, conveying themselves with fear of boils and jumping out at her from behind statues. They only stopped when Percy, apoplectic with rage, told them he was going to write to Mrs. Weasley and tell her Guinea was having nightmares. Meanwhile, hidden from the teachers, a roaring trade in talismans, amulets, and other protective device was sweeping the school. Neville Longbottom brought a large, evil-smelling green onion, a pointed purple crystal, and a rotting new tail before the other Gryffindor's boys pointed out that he was in no danger. He was a pure blood and therefore unlikely to be attacked. They went off for Flitch first. Neville said, his round face fearful, and everyone knows I am almost a squid. In the second week of December, Professor McGonagall came around as usual collecting names of those who would be staying at school for Christmas. Harry, Ron, and Hermione signed her list. They had heard that Malfoy was staying, which struck them as very suspicious. The holiday would be the perfect time to use the Polyjuice potion and try to worm a confession out of him. Unfortunately, the potion was only half finished. They still needed the bicorn horn and the boomslang skin, and the only place they were going to get them was from Snape's private store. Harry privately felt he had rather face Slytherin's legendary monster than let Snape catch him robbing his office. What we need, said Hermione briskly as Thursday afternoon's double potion lesson loomed nearer, is a diversion. Then one of us can sneak into Snape's office and take what we need. Harry and Ron looked at her nervously. I think I had better do an actual stealing, Hermione continued in the matter of fact tone. You two will be expelled if you get into any more trouble, and I have got a clean record. So all you need to do is cause enough mayhem to keep Snape busy for 5 minutes or so. Harry smiled feeble. Deliberately causing mayhem in Snape's potion class was about as safe as poking a sleep dragon in the eye. Potions lesson took place in one of the large dugons. Thursday afternoon's lesson proceeded in the usual way. 20 cauldrons stood steaming between the wooden desks on which stood brass scale and jars of ingredients. Snip rolled through the fumes, making Washpin's remark about the Gryffindors work while the Slytherin sniggered appreciatively. Draco Malfoy, who was Snape's favorite student, kept flicking puffer fish eye at Ron and Harry, who knew that if they related the way get detention faster than you could say unfair. Harry's swelling solution was far too runny, but he had his mind on more important things. He was waiting for Hermione's signal, and he hardly listened as Snape paused to sneer at his watery potion. When Snape turned and walked off to bully Neville, Hermione caught Harry's eye and nodded. Harry ducked swiftly down behind his cauldron, pulled one of Fred's filibuster firework out of his pocket, and gave it a quick prod with his wand. The firework began to fizz and sputter, knowing he had only a second. Harry straightened up, took aim, and lobbed it into the air. It landed right on target in Goyle's cauldron. Goyle's potion exploded, showering the whole class. People shrieked as splash of the swelling solution hit them. Malfoy got a face full and his nose began to swell like a balloon. Goyle blundered around, his hand over his eyes, which had expanded to the size of dinner plate. Snape was trying to restore calm and find out what had happened. Though the confusion, Harry saw Hermione slip quietly into Snape's office. Silence, silence, Snape roared. Anyone who has been splashed, come here for a deflating draught. When I find out who did this, Harry tried not to laugh as he watched Malfoy hurry forward, his head dropping with the weight of nose like a small melon. As half of the class lumbered up to Snape's desk, some waited down with arms like clubs, others unable to talk, though gigantic puffled up lips. Harry and saw Hermione slide back into Dueling, the front of her robes bulging. When everyone had taken a swip of antidote and the various swelling had subsidized, Snape swept over to Goyle Cauldron and scooped out the twisted black remnant of the firework. There was a sudden hush. If I ever find out who threw this, Snape whispered, I shall make sure that person is expelled. Harry arranged his face into what he hoped was a puzzled expression. Snape was looking right at him, and then bell that rang 10 minutes later could not have been more welcome. He knew it was me, Harry told Ron and Hermione as they hurried back to Morning Matters' bathroom. I could tell. Hermione threw the new ingredient into cauldron and began to stir feverishly. It will be ready in 2 weeks, she said happily. Snape can't prove it was you, said Ron reassuringly to Harry. What can he do? Knowing Snape something full, said Harry as a potion frothed and bubbled. A week later, Harry, Ron, and Hermione were walking across the entrance hall when they saw a small knot of people gathered around the notice board reading a piece of parchment that had just been pinned up. Seamus Finnegan and Dean Thomas Bacon were looking excited. They are starting a dueling club, said Seamus. First meeting tonight. I wouldn't mind dueling lesson. They might come in handy one of these days. What you reckon Slytherin's monster can duel? Said Ron, but he too read that sign with interest. Could be useful, he said to Harry and Hermione as they went into dinner. Shall we go? Harry and Hermione were all for it, so at 8 o'clock that evening they hurried back to the great hall. The long dining table had vanished and a golden stage had appeared along one wall. Lit by thousands of candles floating overhead, the ceiling was velveted black once more, and most of the school seemed to be packed beneath it, all carrying their wands and looking excited. I wonder who'll be teaching us, said Hermione as they edged into the chattering crowd. Someone told me Flitwick was a dueling champion when he was young. Maybe it will be him. As long as it's not Harry began, but he ended on a grown. Gilderoy Lockhart was walking onto the stage, replaced in robes of deep plum and accompanied by none other than Snape wearing his usual black. Lockhart waved an arm for silence and called, gather around, gather around. Can everyone see me? Can you tell all hear me? Excellent. Now Professor Dumbledore had granted me permission to start this little dueling club to train you all in case you ever need to defend yourself as I myself have done on countless occasions. For full details see my published works. Let me introduce my assistant, Professor Snape, said Lockhart. Flashing a wide smile, he tell me he know a tiny little bit about dueling himself, as has sportingly agreed to help me with a short demonstration. Before we begin, now, I don't want any of you youngsters to worry. You will still have your potion master when I am through with him. Never fear. Wouldn't it be good if they finished each other off? Ron muttered in Harry's ear. Snape's upper lip was curling. Harry wondered why Lockhart was still smiling. If Snape had been looking at him like that, he had have been running as fast as he could in the opposite direction. Lockhart and Snape turned to face each other and bowed. At last Lockhart did with much twirling of his wand, whereas Snape jerked his head irritably. Then they raised their wands like swords in front of them. As you see, we are holding our wands in the accepted combative positions. Lockhart, who told the silent crowd on the count of three, we will cast our first spell. Neither of us will be aiming to kill, of course. I wouldn't be on that, Harry murmured, watching Snape baring his teeth. One, two, three. Both of them swung their wand above their head and pointed them at their opponent. Snape cried, Expelliarmus! There was a dazzling flash of scarlet light and Lockhart was blasted off his feet. He flew backward off the stage, smashed into the wall, and slid down into the sprawl on the floor. Malfoy and some of other Slytherin cheered. Hermione was dancing on tip-tops. You think he's all right? She squealed through her fingers. Who cares? Said Ron and Harry together. Lockhart was getting unsteadily to his feet. His hat had fallen off and his wavy hair was standing on end. Well, there you have it, he said, tottering back onto the platform. That was disarming charm. As you see, I have lost my wand. Oh, thank you, Miss Brown. Yes, an excellent idea to show them that Professor Snape. But if you don't mind my saying so, it was very obvious that you were about to do. If I had wanted to stop you, it would have been only too easy. However, I felt it would be interesting to let them see. Snape was looking murderous. Possibly Lockhart had noticed because he said, enough demonstration. I'm going to do some come amongst you now and put you all into pairs. Professor Snape, if you don't like to help me, they moved through the crowd watching matching partner Lockhart team Neville with Justin Flinch Fleckley, but Snape reached Harry and Ron first. Time to split up the dream team, I think he sneered. Weasley, you can partner Finnegan Potter. Harry moved automatically toward Hermione. I don't think so, said Snape, smiling coldly. Mr. Malfoy, come over here. See what you make of the famous Potter. And you, Miss Granger, you can partner Miss Bulstrode. Malfoy stuttered over. Blinking behind him walked a Slytherin girl who reminded Harry of a picture he had seen in Holiday with Hags. She was large and square, and her heavy jaw jutted aggressively. Hermione gave her a weak smile that she did not return. Face your partners, called Lockhart. Back on your platform and bow. Harry and Malfoy barely inclined their head, not taking their eyes off each other. Wand at the ready, shouted Lockhart. When I count to three, cast your charm to disarm your opponent. Only to disarm them, you don't want any accident. One, two, three. Harry swung his wand high, but Malfoy had already started on two. His spell hit Harry so hard he felt as though he had been hit over the head with saucepan. He stumbled, but everything still seemed to be working. And wasting no more time, Harry pointed his wand straight at Malfoy and shouted, Rictus Mamprella. A jet of silver light hit Malfoy in the stomach and he doubled up whistling. I said disarm only, Lockhart shouted in alarm over the head of the battling crowd as Malfoy sank to his knees. Harry had hit him with a tickling charm, and he could barely move for laughing. Harry hung back with a vague feeling it would be unsporting to bewitch Malfoy while he was on the floor. But this was a mistake. Gasping for breath, Malfoy pointed his wand at Harry's knees, choked parentallergia, and the next second Harry's leg began to jerk around out of his control in the kind of quick step. Stop, stop, screamed Lockhart, but Snape looked to charge. Finite incantema, he shouted. Harry's feet stopped dancing. Malfoy stopped laughing, and they were able to look up. A haze of greenish smoke was hovering over the scene. Both Neville and Justin were lying on the floor. Panting, Ron was holding up as a shaded face Seamus, apologizing for whatever his broken wand had done. But Hermione and Millicent Bulstrode were still moving. Millicent and Hermione in the headlock, and Hermione was whimpering in pain. Both their wand lie forgotten on the floor. Harry leapt forward and pulled Millicent off. It was difficult. She was a lot bigger than he was. Dear, dear, said Lockhart, skittering through the crowd, looking at the aftermath of the duel. Up you go, Macmillan. Carefully there, Miss Pav said. Pinch it hard. It will stop bleeding in a second. But I think I had been teaching you how to block unfair strife spells, said Lockhart, standing flustered in the midst of the hall. He glanced at Snape, whose black eye glinted, and looked quietly away. Let's have a voluntary pair, Longbottom and Flinch fatally. How about you? Bad idea, Professor Lockhart, said Snape, gliding over like a large and malevolent bat. Longbottom caused devastation with the simplest spell. We'll be sending what's left for Flinch fatally to the hospital wing in a matchbox. Neville's round pink face went pinker. How about Malfoy and Potter? Said Snape with a twisted smile. Excellent idea, said Lockhart, gesturing Harry and Malfoy into the middle of the hall as the crowd backed away to give them room. Now, Harry, said Lockhart, when Draco pointed his wand at you, you do this. He raised his wand, attempt a complicated sort of wingling action and dropped it. As Lockhart quickly picked it up, saying, Oops, my wand is little overexcited. Snape moved closer to Malfoy, bent down and whispered something in his ear. Malfoy smirkled too. Harry looked up nervously at Lockhart and said, Professor, would you show me that blocking thing again? Scared, muttered Malfoy, so that Lockhart couldn't hear him. You wish, said Harry out of the corner of his mouth. Lockhart cuffed Harry merely on the shoulder. Just do what I did, Harry. What? Drop my wand? But Lockhart wasn't listening. 3, 2, 1, go, he shouted. Malfoy raised his wand quickly and bellowed, Serpensorita. The end of his wand exploded. Harry watched aghast as long. Black snake shot out of it, fell heavily onto the floor between them and raised itself ready to strike. There were screamed as the crowd backed swiftly away, clearing the floor. Don't move, Potter, said Snape lazily, clearly enjoying the sight of Harry standing motionless, eye to eye with an angry snake. I'll get rid of it. Allow me, shouted Lockhart. He brandished his wand at the snake, and three was a loud bang. The snake, instead of vanishing, flew 10 feet into the air and fell back to the floor with a loud smack. In range, hissed furiously. It slithered straight toward Justin Fletch flatly and raised itself again, fang export poised to strike. Harry wasn't sure what made him do that. He wasn't even aware of deciding to do it. All he knew was that his legs were carrying him forward as though he was on caster, and that he had shouted stupidly at the snake, Leave him alone. And miraculously, inexplicable, the snake slumped to the floor, docile as a thick black garden hose. Its eye now on Harry. Harry felt the fear drained out of him. He knew the snake wouldn't attack anymore now, though how he knew it, he couldn't have explained. He looked up at Justin grinning. expecting to see Justin looking relieved or puzzled or even grateful, but certainly not angry and scared. What do you think you are playing at? He shouted, and before Harry could say anything, Justin had turned and stormed out of the hall. Snape stepped forward, waved his wand, and the snake vanished in a small puff of black smoke. Snape, too, was looking at Harry in an unexpected way. It was a shrewd and calculating look, and Harry didn't like it. He was also dimly aware of an ominous muttering all around the walls. Then he felt a tugging on the back of his robes. Ron, said Ron's voice in his ear. Move on, come on. Ron steered him out of the hall. Hermione hurried alongside them. As they went through the doors, the people on either side drew away as though they were frightened of catching something. Harry didn't have a clue what was going on, and neither Ron and nor Hermione explained anything until they had dragged him all the way up to the empty Gryffindor common room. The Ron pushed Harry into an armchair and said, "You're a parcel mouth? What did you tell me?" "I'm what?" said Harry. "A parcel mouth," said Ron. "You can talk to snakes." "I know," said Harry. "I mean, that's the only second time I have ever done it. I accidentally set a boa constrictor on my cousin Dudley at the zoo once. Long story, but it was telling me it had never been Brazil, and I sort of set it free without meaning to. That was before I knew I was a wizard." "A boa constrictor told you it has never been seen Brazil," Ron repeated faintly. "So," said Harry, "I bet a lot of people here can do it." "Oh no, they can't," said Ron. "It's not a very common gift, Harry. This is bad." "What's bad?" said Harry, starting to feel quite angry. "What's wrong with everyone? Listen, if I hadn't told that snake not to like Justin." "Oh, that's what you said it to it? What do you mean?" "You were there. You heard me. I heard you speaking parcel tongue," said Ron. "Snake language. You could have been saying anything, no wonder Justin panicked. You sounded like you were edging the snake or something. It was creepy, you know." Harry gaped at him. "I spoke a different language, but I didn't realize. How can I speak a language without knowing I can speak it?" Ron shook his head. Both he and Hermione were looking as if someone had died. Harry couldn't see what was so terrible. "Do you want to tell me what's wrong with stopping a massive snake biting off Justin's head?" he said. "What does it matter how I did it as long as Justin doesn't have to join the headless hunt?" "It matters," said Hermione, speaking at last in a hushed voice, "because being able to talk to snake was what Salazar Slytherin was famous for. That's why the symbol of Slytherin house is serpent." Harry's mouth fell open. "Exactly," said Ron, "and now the whole school is going to think you are his great 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 grandson or something." "But I'm not," said Harry with a panic he couldn't quite explain. "You'll find that hard to prove," said Hermione. "He lived about 1,000 years ago. For all we know, you could be Harry, lie awake for hours that night, though a gap in the curtain around his four-poster. He watched snow staring to drift past the tower window and wondered, could he be a descendant of Salazar Slytherin? He didn't know anything about his father's family. After all, the Dursley had always forbidden question about his wizarding relatives." Quietly, Harry tried to say something in parcel tongue. The word wouldn't come. It seemed how had be face to face with a snake to do it. "But I'm in Gryffindor," Harry thought. "The sorting hat wouldn't have put me in here if I had Slytherin blood." "Ah," said a nasty little voice in his brain, "but the sorting hat wanted to put you in Slytherin, don't you remember?" Harry turned over. He had seen Justin the next day in herbology, and he had explained that he had been calling the snake off, not easing it on, which he thought angrily pummeling his pillow. As full should have realized by next morning, however, the snow that had begun in the night had turned into blizzard so thick that the last herbology lesson of the term was cancelled. Professor Sprout wanted to fit socks as scars on the mandrakes, a tricky operation she would entrusted to no one else. Now that is was so important for the mandrakes to grow quickly and revive Miss Norris and Colin Creevy. Harry fretted about his next to the fire in Gryffindor's common room, while Ron and Hermione used their time off to play a game of wizard chess. For heaven's sake, Harry said, Hermione, exasperated as one of Ron's bio-shops whistled her knight off his horse and dragged him off the board. Go and find Justin if it's so important to you. So Harry got up and left through the portrait hole, wondering where Justin might be. The castle was darker than it usually was in daytime because of the thick swirling grey snow at every window. Shivering, Harry walked past classroom where lessons were taking place, catching snatch of what was happening within. Professor McGonagall was shouting at someone who, by the sound of it, had turned his friend into Badger. Resisting the urge to take a look, Harry walked on by, thinking that Justin might be using his free time to catch up on some work and deciding to check the library first. A group of Hufflepuff who should have been in herbology were instead sitting at the back of the library, but they didn't seem to be working. Between the long line of high bookshelves, Harry could see that their heads were close together and they were having what looked like an absorbing conversation. He couldn't see whether Justin was among them. He was walking toward them when someone of what they were saying met his ears, and he paused to listen, hidden in the invisibility section. So anyway, a stout boy was saying, I told Justin to hide up in our dormitory. I mean to say, if Porter's marked him down as his next victim, it's best if he keep a low profile for a while. Of course, Justin been waiting for something like this to happen ever since he came up to Porter he was Muggle. Justin actually told him he had been down to hear him. That's not the kind of thing you badly vowed slithering higher on the low seat. You definitely thinks it is Porter, then Erin, said a girl with blonde pigtail anxiously. Ha! Said the stout boy solemnly. He is a parcel mouth. Everyone knows that the mark of dark wizard. Have you ever seen of a decent one who could talk to snakes? They call Slytherin himself Serpent Tongue. There was some heavy murmuring at this, and Erin went on. Remember what was written on the wall? Enemies of the hair. Beware, Potter had some sort of run-in with Flitch next thing we know. Flitch's cat attacked that first year. Greavy was annoying Potter at the Quidditch match, taking picture of him while he was lying in the mud. Next thing we know, Greavy been attacked. He always seems so nice though, said Hannah uncertainly, and well, he's the one who made you know who disappear. He can't be all bad, can he? Ernie lowered his voice mysteriously. The Hufflepuff bent closer, and Harry edged nearer so that he could catch Ernie's word. No one know how he survived that attack. By you know who, I mean to say he was only baby when it happened. He should have been blasted into Slytherin. Only a really powerful dark wizard could have survived a curse like that. He dropped his voice until it was barely more than a whisper and said, That's probably why you know who wanted to kill him in the first place didn't want another Dark Lord competing with him. I wondered that other power Potter been hiding. Harry couldn't take any more, clearing his throat loudly. He stepped out from behind the bookshelf. If he hadn't been feeling so angry, he would have found the sight that greeted him funny. Every one of the Hufflepuff looked as though they had been petrified by the sight of him, and the color was draining out of Eden's face. "Hello," said Harry. "I'm looking for Justin Fletch." The Hufflepuff words fear and clearly been confirmed. They all looked fearful at Erin. "Do you want with him?" said Ernie in querying voice. "I wanted to tell him what really happened with that snake at the dueling club," said Harry. Ernie bit his white lip and then, taking a deep breath, said, "We were all there. We saw what happened." "Then you noticed that after I spoke to it, the snake backed off," said Harry. "All I saw," said Ernie stubbornly, though he was trembling as he spoke, "was you speaking parcel tongue and chasing the snake toward Justin." "I didn't chase it at him," Harry said, his voice shaking with anger. "It didn't even touch him." "It was a very near miss," said Ernie. "And in case you are getting idea," he added hastily, "I might tell you that you can trace my family back the 9 generations of witches and warlocks, and my blood is as pure as anyone's. So I don't care what sort of blood you have got," said Harry furiously. "Why would I want to attack Muggle bonds? I have heard you hate those Muggle you live with," said Ernie swiftly. "It's not possible to live with Dursleys and not hate them," said Harry. "I had liked to see you try it." He turned on his heel and stormed out of the library, earning himself a reproving glare from Madame Pince, who was polishing the glare cover of a large spellbook. Harry blundered up the corridor, barely noticed where he was going. He saw in such fury. The result was that he walked into something very large and solid, which knocked him backward on the floor. "Oh, hello, Hagrid," Harry said, looking up. Hagrid's face was entirely hidden by a woolly, snow-covered balaclava, but it couldn't possible by anyone else, as he filled most of the corridor in his moleskin overcoat. A dead rooster was hanging from one of his massive glove hands. "All right, Harry," he said, pulling up the balaclava so he could speak. "Why aren't you in class?" "Cancelled," said Harry, getting up. "What are you doing here?" Hagrid held up the limped roaster. "Second word kill this term," he explained. "It's either foxes or blood-sucking buzzards, and I need the headmaster's permission to put the charm around the coop." He peered more closely at Harry from under his thick snow-flecked eyebrow. "You sure you're all right? You look all hot and bothered." Harry couldn't bring himself to repeat what Ernie and the rest of Hufflepuff had been saying about him. "It's nothing," he said. "I had better get going, Hagrid. It's Transfiguration next, and I have got to pick up my books." He walked off, his mind still full of what Ernie had said about him. Justin been waiting for something like this to happen ever since he let slip of Potter he was Muggle-born. Harry steamed up the stair and turned along another corridor, which was particularly dark. The torch had been extinguished by a strong icy draft that was blowing through a low window pane. He was halfway down the passage when he tripped headlong over something lying on the floor. He turned to squint at what he had fallen over and felt as though his stomach had dissolved. Justin Fletchley was lying on the floor, rigid and cold, a look of shock frozen on his face, his eyes staring blackly at the ceiling. And that wasn't all. Next to him was another figure, a strange sight Harry had ever seen. It was nearly headless, Nick, no longer purely white and transparent but black and smoky, floating immobile and horizontal 6 inches off the floor. His head was half off and his face wore an expression of shock identical to Justin's. Harry got to his feet, his breathing fast and shallow, his heart doing a kind of drum roll against his ribs. He looked widely up and down the deserted corridor and saw a line of spiders scuttling as fast as they could away from the bodies. The only sound were the muffled voice of the teachers from the classes on either side. He could run, and no one could ever knew he had been there, but he couldn't just leave them lying there. He had to get help. Would anyone believe he hadn't had anything to do with this? As he stood there, panicking, a door right next to him opened with bang. Pius the poltergeist came shooting out. Why, it's Potter, wee Potter. Cake, Pius knocking Harry's glasses askew as he bounced past him. What's Potter up to? What's Potter lurking? Pius stopped halfway through a mid-air somersault upstairs down. He spotted Justin and nearly headless Nick. He flipped the right way up, filling the lungs, and before Harry could stop him, screamed, "Attack! Attack! Another attack! No mortal or ghost is safe! Run for your lives! Attack! Crash! Crash! Crash!" Door flew open along the corridor and people flooded out. For several long minutes there was a scene of each confusion, and Justin was in danger of being squashed, and people kept standing in nearly headless Nick. Harry found himself pinned against the wall as the teacher shouted for quiet. Professor McGonagall came running, followed by her own class, one of whom still had black and white striped hair. She used her wand to set off a loud bang, which restored silence and ordered everyone back into their class. No sooner had the scene cleared somewhat than Ernie the Hufflepuff arrived, panting on the scene. Caught in the act, Ernie yelled, his face streaked white, pointing his finger dramatically at Harry. "That will do, McMilly," said Professor McGonagall sharply. Pius was bobbling overhead, now grinning weakly, surveying the scene. Pius always loved chaos. As the teachers bent over Justin and nearly headless Nick examining them, Pius broke into song. "Oh, Potter, you rotter! Oh, what have you done? You are killing off students. You think it's good fun?" "That's enough, Pius," barked Professor McGonagall, and Pius zoomed away backward with the tongue out at Harry. Justin was carried up to the hospital wing by Professor Flitwick and Professor Sinatra of the astronomy department, but nobody seemed to know what to do for nearly headless Nick. In the end, Professor McGonagall conjured a large fan out of thin air, which she gave to Ernie with instruction to lift nearly headless Nick up the stairs. This Ernie did, fanning Nick along like a silent black hawk-craft. This left Harry and Professor McGonagall alone together. "This way, Harry Potter," she said. "Professor," said Harry at once. "I swear I didn't. This is out of my hand." "Potter," said Professor McGonagall curtly. They marched in silence around the corner, and she stopped before a large and extremely ugly stone gargoyle. "Lemon dropped," she said. This was evidently a password, because the gargoyle sprang suddenly to life and hopped aside as the wall behind him split into two. Even full of dread for what was coming, Harry couldn't fail to amaze. Behind the wall was a spiral staircase that was moving smoothly upward like an escalator. As he and Professor McGonagall stepped onto it, Harry heard the wall thud close behind them. They rose upward in a circle higher and higher until the last, slightly dizzy, Harry saw a gleaming oak door ahead with a bar's knockers in the shape of griffin. He knew now where he was being taken. This must be where Dumbledore lived. That's it for today. Thank you so much. Stay tuned for next chapter. Till then, see ya. Bye bye.